There you have it, the Star Spangled Banner. We're proud Canadians, but we love America, and we know that the fate of the world turns on the results of their presidential election tonight. Hi, everybody. My name is Ezra Levant. I am the boss at Rebel News, but a boss that never works alone. He has a team of allies and colleagues, and boy, do we have an amazing crew to help us tell the story tonight, starting with one of my favorite people in the world, our chief reporter, and really one of our longest serving reporters, Sheila Gunn Reid from Northern Alberta. Sheila, great to see you again. Thanks for sitting in the chair for what could be 7-8 hours. Thanks for agreeing.
Yeah, well, I didn't realize that I could have said no. Not that I would have.
But
Not
why
that I
would
have
you?
anyway.
What else would you be doing other than following every twist and turn in this election?
Exactly. I would be glued to my computer and my TV screen and my phone anyway. So why not do it with you and all of our friends out there in the Rebel universe? So I'm excited to be here. And this is a really pivotal election, as you said, not just for Americans, but for us here in Canada, and particularly for us out here in the West. Wouldn't it be great to have a pro-oil and gas president in the White House again?
It's that's one of 100 ways that this election result will affect Canada. I can think of others. Wars, the culture and zeitgeist around freedom of speech, censorship or freedom of big tech platforms. Of course, we all use American platforms from Facebook to Twitter, etc. Oil, economics in general. Will we be in an age of growth or an age of decline? Open borders. Will anyone set the example and push back? I can think of a dozen ways that this election will affect Canadians directly and in terms of setting a new norm. But let me tell you who else we have tonight. And I want to jump right into it because we have literally mapped out tonight in 10-minute increments. It's incredible. Let me give you a little bit of a taste, a teaser of what's coming. I'm here in our Toronto world headquarters. Sheila is in Western Canada, but we've got people around the continent. Our friend Avi Yemini from Melbourne, Australia, has spent the last month crisscrossing America in an RV, talking to people on the ground. He is at Mar-a-Lago tonight. I think that's probably the most exciting place to be. David Menzies is in Washington, D.C. He'll chime in from there. Alexa Lavoie is in New York City, where Trump Tower is, also Times Square, one of the best cities in the world to do streeters, man on the street interviews. Tamara Ugolini will be joining us from her home studio. And wow, what a lineup of people. Ian Miles Chong, the global force, former Rebel journalist, Twitter-aholic. We've got subject matter experts. Gordon G. Chang, an expert in communist China. Wow, that'll be an interesting conversation. And other media, too, were reaching out beyond the Rebels. Post-millennials editor-in-chief Libby Emmons will join us tonight. That's exciting. She Van Fleet, the author of Mao's America. I love her so much. Drea Humphrey from Vancouver. Viva Fry. It goes on. Calvin Robinson, True North's Rachel Parker. I don't want to give it all away, but I only got through half the names there. You are in for a treat. So keep it tuned here. Do not go to the regime media. They will demoralize you. They will lie to you, as they have been doing. Well, I was going to say these past months, but really they've been doing it for the past 4 years, maybe the past 8 years, Sheila.
Well, for sure the last 8 years. And that's why independent media is so important, not just in Canada, but across the world. We see how captured the American media is by Democrat fever. And people see the disconnect. They can see that what the Democrat media is telling them is not what they're seeing in their hometowns and on their main streets. And so they're relying on free speech outlets like X and Rumble to help them. And so do we. I should tell everybody what we're doing here and how they can interact with us, because we do something slightly different than the mainstream media and the regime media, as Ezra calls it. We are streaming on YouTube simultaneously as another platform. We stream on YouTube because we do have 1.6 million sets of eyeballs there. If you prefer to watch us there, then we'll make sure that we're there for you. But I should let you know that YouTube is a censorship platform. They've completely demonetized us. There are things that we cannot say or tell you, however true they may be, on YouTube. So we also broadcast on a great free speech platform. You'll hear more about it throughout the night. It's called Rumble. And they believe in your human right to free speech. And they allow you to support the work that we do here at Rebel News out of the goodness of your heart. We know that Justin Trudeau, if you're a Canadian, is taking more of your money than ever before. So we appreciate that you choose to support us with your hard-earned dollars. So you can leave something called a Rumble rant. That's their paid chat. Helps us keep the lights on here at Rebel News. Every little bit helps. And it gives you a chance to interact with us as well. Have your say. We democratize the show that way. If your Rumble rant is over the $5 US cutoff, I'm obligating myself and my boss, Ezra, to read and address it on air. So if you want to support Rumble and support Rebel News, might I suggest you leave us a Rumble rant. And, if you've got questions to put to our guests that Ezra mentioned along the way, put a bit in a Rumble rant. Maybe we'll have a chance to ask them that way as well. So I think those are the nuts and bolts of what we're doing. I guess I'll hand it back to Ezra.
Thanks very much. I'm excited to see us up and running on Rumble. We already have 2,300 people watching, and we've only been on air for 5 minutes, just clearing our throats, so to speak. On Twitter, we're streaming live. On X, approximately the same viewership, 3,200, and growing by the second. I suppose I should check YouTube, but as you correctly point out, we broadcast there only because we do have, I think it's about 1.6 million viewers that are still there, and we love them. It's just unfortunate that YouTube has put themselves between us and the audience. And I think that's actually an enormous factor in this election. What feels so different to me, Sheila, is the Elon Musk factor. I'm not talking about his participation in the rallies in Pennsylvania, which is fun to see. I'm not talking about his ideas and opinions, which are provocative and educational and informative. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about what he's done for all of us, not just Twitter users, but even people who don't use Twitter. I'm talking about stopping the deep state systematic censorship of the entire political dialogue. So not only has he allowed people to clap back, to speak out, and to hear the truth, but he has, community notes. The fact that people can fact check the mainstream media in real time, whether they like it or not, is one of my favorite things in the world. Stories that would have been killed 4 years ago. We'll talk to Libby Emmons about this. Stories like, for example, the Hunter Biden laptop that was decided by literally the deep state. A dozen Democrat-leaning spies said, oh, that's a fake. It was not fake. But Twitter blocked that. And even though the New York Post, one of America's oldest newspapers, verified it, it was denormalized and hidden by big tech. Elon Musk has allowed us to see what's really going on. He has woken us up from the Matrix. And let me play a quick clip for you now. Here's Rachel Maddow of MSNBC saying what many Democrats have said. They can't wait to win, to destroy Elon Musk and X, to smash his contracts with the government, to censor social media. Take a listen to what they want to get back to. Take a look.
Even if Trump doesn't win, the Defense Department and NASA are going to need a new arrangement for all their rockets and for all the multi-billion-dollar contracts Elon Musk's companies have with the U.S. government. The U.S. government is going to have to either, unwind from all of those contracts, or Elon Musk's companies are going to have to unwind from him. This is an untenable reality in national security terms. Now that we know what we know about Elon Musk.
And what is it that we now know about Elon Musk?
We know that he can land.
We know he can land a rocket backwards, upside down, and grab it with the giant robot chopsticks. We know he can make humanoid robots and Teslas. That's what we know about him. What she's really saying is we know he's a Republican now. Imagine someone who would destroy the greatest value creator of all time, the man who's putting 90% of all the world's satellites into orbit. She would destroy that for her vengeance. They want to do to Elon Musk and to everyone else, big or small, what they did to Donald Trump. Lawfare, warfare, prison, endless harassment. That is the fascist future. They project their own fascism, Sheila, when they say Donald Trump would end democracy. I saw a clip. Efron, can you find it? Someone did an AI trick. They replaced journalists saying this is a threat to our democracy with the phrase, this is a threat to our bureaucracy. Every time the mainstream media said threat to democracy, AI just tweaked it to say bureaucracy. And when you watch it that way, it all makes sense. Elon Musk said when he was on Joe Rogan that this could be the last election if Donald Trump loses. Now, I don't think he meant that literally. I think he just meant it's the last contestable election, the last winnable election, the last election that isn't totally and utterly controlled. Here's that video I was talking. This is an AI trick, but it just shows you they're not really talking about democracy. They're talking about their own power. Take a quick look.
If the Democrats fail, it might be the end of American bureaucracy.
Our bureaucracy really is in fundamental peril.
The foundations of American bureaucracy under attack. They want to destroy our bureaucracy.
We are a bureaucracy in danger.
We're watching an election where people are on the ballot openly advocating the end of bureaucracy.
That's what Republicans are doing, attacking bureaucracy, attempting to destroy bureaucracy, and they're doing it with glee.
This is the end of bureaucracy in America.
When will America stop sleepwalking towards the end of bureaucracy?
Right. It's Democrats.
It goes on, but I mean,
Beautiful.
the
true.
chutzpah there, Sheila, the chutzpah. Go ahead. You were going to say.
No, I was just saying that it's entirely true. That's what's threatened here. It's not democracy. It's their stranglehold on information and who gets to be in charge. These people are threatened by disruptors. Donald Trump is a disruptor. He disrupted the Republican Party. Elon Musk is a disruptor. He's disrupted technology. He's disrupted how we communicate. I'm talking to you right now on Starlink, but even how we think about radio and the media that we consume. We've seen that Joe Rogan has now endorsed Donald Trump. So this, like I said, this is the election of disruptors and the people who want to hang on to the old way of doing things. By old way, I mean their way. They're very threatened by this, and I think we're going to see them do everything they can to hang on to it.
All right, Sheila, I love to banter. I love to throw to clips. I love to kibitz, but we are on standby with Avi Yemini, who's fresh off a month-long RV tour across America. It was really hilarious. You got to go to aviacrossamerica.com and watch. I was down there with the lads for a couple of their stops, but they had a great time. I'm sort of jealous. Imagine driving across America, talking to ordinary folks at grassroots level, not at 30,000 feet like the glitterati. Anyhow, Avi is in Mar-a-Lago. Avi, can you hear us?
The connection is not great. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you loud and clear.
Okay, that's good. So sorry if I delayed responses because you're kind of breaking up for me. But here we are at the official Trump watch party, and it's starting to fill up a little bit here. We've been in the last, I guess, we've been here for a few hours. Let's see if you can come right around. Oh, the camera cuts off there, but basically. You can see people starting to gather and cautiously optimistic. There's a bit of excitement in the air at the moment. I think the majority here seem to think that Trump might have this one.
I mean, I should tell you not to worry. You're sounding crystal clear, and the video is crystal clear. Give us a little bit more information about where you are exactly, who is there with you, if you've seen anyone, and if there's any source of information, if there's any feed, if there's any tips you're hearing that perhaps we don't have access to.
I hope you're hearing me well because I'm not completely getting you guys. But look, I don't think anyone has any special tips here at the moment. People are watching. If you can see behind me, the big screen, and as the numbers come in, and as the results for the first Republican win came in, that the whole room just began cheering and dancing. So I think people are just waiting to see what happens and are hoping that the expected result is going to come sooner rather than later. There is certainly an excitement, but a bit of nervousness in the air, to be honest. People are people are a bit distrusting, to say the least, of the current process. So we'll be here all night, and we'll run the live feed. I'll disconnect and try to reconnect at some point to see if we can fix that audio because it is a bit hard to hear you guys.
Okay, Sheila, go ahead. Do you have a question for Avi?
Avi, hopefully you can hear me. Are there any other international media in the room? Canadian media, Australian media, or is it just all American media there?
No, it isn't. So behind me here, so in fact, right next to me is Dubai Media, literally on the corner of the screen. But it is. Hold on, I'll come back here so you can kind of see.
Yeah.
It is packed here. In fact, it was very hard to even find a spot to set up our camera because the real estate here was that they were literally competing to get every little inch of this place. And then there's obviously a barrier right next to us in which separates the media to the people coming to watch the party. But there is media from all around the world. Like I said, this is right next to me, Dubai. I saw BBC. I've seen Australian reporters from the mainstream media. Yeah, I think it's certainly a mix. There is less alternative media in here than I'd expected. There's a lot of mainstream media from around the world.
Great. Well, Avi, thanks very much for being down there, and thanks for going on the month-long trip across America. I'm a little bit jealous. I know you'll be looking forward to reconnecting with your family. We'll let you fiddle with your earphones, and we'll come back to you again. By the way, it was crystal clear on our side. So we look forward to hearing from you. I think you're going to be in the most important place tonight. We'll catch up with you again. Avi Yemini, our Australian bureau chief, who has been in America this past month. Well, you know what, Sheila, the problem about Twitter, I mean, it's a wonderful thing, but it figures out what you like and you don't like based on what you look at. And so it can be reinforcing. It can give you what's called confirmation bias. You see things and say, yeah, I thought so. And I try my best to sample what the other side is saying because I don't want to trick myself. I mean, I'm the easiest person that I can convince. I want to hear what the bad news is too. And so I'm worried that all the good news I'm seeing is simply people like me who are expressing their hope. And I do feel like it's a little bit different from last time, but I'm worried that even Trump, if he wins the election, he'll lose through cheating or through glitches. I've been seeing things all day about this entire county or that entire town where the voting machines weren't working. I don't know why America uses voting machines. Canada, the UK, why not use a pencil and a piece of paper? It can't be hacked. It can't glitch. So I got to tell you, Sheila, I'm exuberant and excited because I follow people I like, but I'm petrified because I think the other side is up to things in the dark. What do you think?
Well, and there's so many elections happening tonight too, so there could be a lot of meddling along the way. I mean, there's Senate races, House races, governors. So there's a lot of things going on tonight that we can talk about, and a lot of things that will impact the makeup of the United States going forward, regardless of the presidential election. But I don't know if you've noticed, Ezra, but X, as Twitter's now known, they're serving up more of a cross section of people to you than they used to. Like before, I could just narrowly look at my little bubble and never have to be exposed to the other side. But more on their For You page, and I think that's probably a testament to Elon Musk, is you'll hear all sides of the issues that you have been thinking and talking about served up to your For You page instead of just the Ezra Levants of the world populating my feed.
In a moment, Sheila, we're going to go to our friend David Menzies in Washington, D.C. I'm not sure if he's outside the White House. I understand they sort of locked that area down, put a big old, wall around it. And but I think he might be operating out of the Rumble studios there. Let me just check in my ear, Efron or Olivia. Oh, I do see that David is on standby at the Rumble studio. So why don't we go to him right away? David, great to see you. And you are at Rumble HQ in Washington. They also have offices in Florida and Toronto. Great to see you.
Yes, it's a beautiful studio. Great to see you, boss, and of course, Sheila, Gunn, Reid. And to your point, that's where we began our odyssey, outside the White House. You can't see the White House, though, Ezra. It's behind now, if you can imagine, from the beginning of Lafayette Park, 3 walls. There's a new temporary wall on the street that Lafayette Park starts on. And then there's a very big black temporary wall because they're building the inauguration ceremony stands, even though that's happening in January. I don't know why they need like 3 months. But anyway, and then there's the supersized wall that is in front of the White House. The point is, Ezra, I thought walls and fences were bad, but it looks like when it comes to protecting the butts of the political elite, they're very good because they're very effective. But when it comes to putting walls and fences on the U.S. southern border with Mexico, nah, that's a little insensitive. Let's let at least 8.5 million illegal aliens into the country. It's astonishing, the double standard.
Well, I think that the fence, if I had to guess, it's got nothing to do with the inauguration, which is months away. I mean, that would take a couple of days to put up. It's got to do with the fact that Washington, D.C. is a heavily Democrat city, and they have a specialty called rioting. And they rioted all through 2020 to help destabilize America under Trump. And if Donald Trump wins tonight, there will be riots. If Kamala Harris wins tonight, there's no such thing as a Republican riot. In my entire life, I've never heard of a Republican riot. But I've always heard of left-wing riots, Antifa riots, Democrat riots, Black Lives Matter riots, Occupy Wall Street riots. And that's, I think, what they will do. They'll burn the place down. They'll have a real insurrection.
You know what, Ezra? That's a great point. My cameraman, Maurizio, and I, we went down into downtown D.C. today, and we noticed that it wasn't all the businesses, but there were several, including McDonald's, including some mom and pop coffee shops, including a restaurant that had covered all their glass windows with plywood. There was one restaurant in particular, Ezra. I talked to the building manager. He wouldn't come on camera, but he said what you're looking at is $45,000 in plywood. In fact, he said in the DC area, the lumber places are sold out of it. And obviously that's meant to protect these businesses against rioters that are going to throw rocks through a window. And to your point, I don't think if, for example, Kamala Harris is successful tonight, I don't think you see MAGA Nation doing that. I think you see Antifa, Black Lives Matter. Don't forget the pro-Hamas crowd. They're not going to let an opportunity like this slip by. And that's what's going to happen. And really, can someone kindly explain that when something doesn't go your way, you get a rock and you ruin the business of a little mom and pop shop? It is baffling. So that was really kind of disturbing to see in DC today.
Sheila, go ahead. And then I want to throw to a video. We've got a video of David doing some streeters out there. Sheila, do you have a question for David? And then, or should we jump into the streeters?
Let's go straight to the streeters.
Okay, let's take a look.
Okay.
Si puedes votar, ¿quién quieres votar? Harris or Trump?
Okay.
Yeah.
Donald Trump! Donald Trump! Donald Trump! Donald Trump!
Wait a minute, you're only supposed to translate, not editorialize.
Right.
Okay, then. David Menzies for Rebel News here in Washington, D.C. in what is the political version of Super Bowl Sunday. Namely, it is the 2024 U.S. presidential election day. And trust me, behind that big black fence, there is the White House. That's where we're at. And we're just here, folks, to see, talk to people, find out on D-Day, which is today, November the 5th, who are they voting for and why? Can't wait to hear the answers, although keep in mind, this is a heavily Democrat town, but nevertheless, you always get a lot of people visiting. Let's see what U.S. voters have to say. Who would you choose, Harris or Trump?
I would actually choose neither. I would go for the Greenpeace movement. And
are they on the ballot?
Absolutely.
Well, regardless to who wins, man, we just gonna be further divided. It doesn't matter who wins.
So what is the solution, sir?
Let's start talking to each other and stop talking at each other.
Well, I definitely want Trump. Who's going to win? Who knows? So much shenanigans going on already in Pennsylvania.
I'm not voting this year. I'm appalled at the Republicans Party nomination, just like disgusted at what they've done and what they are willing to do. And then the Democrats, I'm appalled because they are refusing to address the situation.
¿Quién quieres votar? Harris or Trump? Si podía.
Donald Trump, Donald Trump, Donald Trump, Donald Trump.
Wait a minute, you're only supposed to translate, not editorialize.
Right.
What makes you vote for Harris?
Because she's reasonable
Oh, in what way?
in understanding people's problems, and she can end division. I don't know if she'll end the division because I think Trump has made the division so severe. But I think I worry. I think the country could fall apart.
It was very hard. I voted for Harris, but that doesn't mean I'm not holding her accountable for what she's doing in Gaza or what she's letting ride. Free Palestine. So I did vote for her, but it was a very complicated vote.
In a hypothetical world, ma'am, if you were a citizen, who would get your vote, Harris or Trump?
It's a hard choice. I just trust God that he has the right one to win.
For the promotion of your causes, who would make the better president, Harris or Trump?
I believe Harris would myself. That's where my vote's going.
Okay, and why would you say that?
Well, because there needs to be a bottom line, the border problems and that sort of thing.
Okay, then. Tell me why you are voting for Harris.
I think she has a good policies. I think she wants to help the middle class have economic security and to make sure that they are ready to be able to have employment and jobs and opportunity.
My choice is Jesus Christ.
Oh, okay. I don't think he's on the ballot, though, right?
Well, even when he's not on the ballot, he's always King of Kings and Lord of Lords. So our hope is that we see a move of God in this nation because we're in great need of God moving in our nation. We have a lot of wickedness with abortion and homosexuality and conversion of the genders, and we need Jesus to move in our nation. We need revival even more than we need political leadership.
What's your prediction? What's going to happen at the end of the night?
Well, I definitely voted in North Carolina during the early voting time for Donald John Trump, and he's looking really, really good right now because of all the rulings by different judges for the RNC, thanks to Laura Trump and Mr. Whatley, Chairman Whatley. We're in a total different ballgame compared to 2020. It's really even now because of all the great court rulings that have gone in favor of Trump.
Said right off the bat, the situation in Gaza, you're not happy with it. But I look back at the record of the Trump administration. Peace was breaking out all over the place, the Middle East. There was no war. There was no war in Ukraine. If Gaza is a big issue and world peace is a big issue, isn't it? Doesn't that make the case for Donald Trump?
I mean, I'm not saying that there aren't some like positives that happen along the way, but I think his personality and what he stands for and what he incited on January 6th, all of that outweighs those little details that you just mentioned about like the Ukraine and things like that.
Yeah, January 6th, which kind of looked like, at first, Ezra, I thought it was people attending Comic-Con, you know, the guy with the big horns, right? But that outweighs world peace? Ooh, I don't think so.
Sheila, what do you think?
Well, just some of those people are just so dang clueless. Like, you know, like if you're voting for Black fathers, you might not want to vote for a homewrecker like Kamala Harris, but that's just a personal thing. I'm actually surprised to see such a decent mix of people on the streets of Washington. I expected it to be a Democrat wasteland.
Yeah, and, you know, it's funny, Sheila, when you do challenge the pro-Democrat people, I mean, that was just a sampling of what we uncovered today. When you confound them with logic, if you will, they tend to say, okay, we're wrapping up this interview, and they walk away. But, you know, the Black couple that we spoke to who are pro-Harris, the gentleman, he was homeless. And I said to him that isn't the key question in every election in any country, are you better off now than you were 4 or 5 years ago, what have you? And I can't find anyone, aside from those who have invested in pharmaceutical stocks during COVID, to answer in the affirmative. Go to the gas pump, go to the grocery store, look at your mortgage payments, look at the inflation rate. I mean, it is an all-out assault, and I think of James Carville, the political strategist for Bill Clinton back in the 90s. It's the economy, stupid, and I really think that's going to move the needle. Also of note, we Maurizio and I took 3 separate Uber rides, and each driver was a black male originally from Africa. One was Nigerian, one was from Togo, one was from Kenya. And the first 2, I asked who they're voting for, and it is Trump all the way. And they found it absolutely insulting last week when Obama did that lecture. If you're a black male, you better do the right thing and vote for Kamala Harris. The third man, the Kenyan, I guess it's good news, bad news. He would vote for Harris, but I guess the good news is he doesn't have his green card yet, so he cannot vote. But the thing is, it's not that he's anti-Republican, anti-conservative. He just does not like Donald Trump. And I think one of the big questions, Sheila, in this election is, does your hatred, if you are in the hater camp, does your hatred for Donald Trump outweigh your love for the United States of America? Because I don't care if you're Republican, Democrat, Independent, or you're one of these people that doesn't give a rodent's rectum about politics. If you look at the Trump administration record on everything, employment of minorities, the inflation rate, as I said in the video, peace was breaking out all over the place. Energy independence for the first time in 70 years. You look at all that and look what we've had. Oh, and by the way, a foreign border that did not resemble a slab of Swiss cheese. The estimates are at least 8.5 million illegal aliens have come across the border in the last 4 years. And Kamala Harris, well, once upon a time, she was the border czar, but the Czarina Harris doesn't seem to acknowledge that honorific anymore. And look at what's happened under the Biden administration.
David, I'm going to interrupt you because I see that enough news is coming out from the state of Georgia that the Associated Press is saying it's leaning Republican. I see we have a graphic. Florida,
Also,
no surprise, leaning Republican. That was the big story of the last election. Ron DeSantis getting a lot of credit there. Kentucky and Indiana, no surprises there. Kentucky, a very conservative state. But I'm delighted to see that Georgia is leaning Republican. We can put that on the screen. Obviously, no surprise that Vermont, one of the most liberal states, is going Harris. That would be.
But Vermont didn't Vermont just moments ago re-elect a conservative governor?
I don't know my Vermont governors. I forgive me.
They did.
Okay, well, I'm glad to hear it.
I don't understand Vermont. Vermont has Phil Scott. So Phil Scott, the governor, he wins with like 75% of the vote, a Republican, and yet these people keep electing Bernie Sanders and throwing their electoral college votes towards Kamala Harris. I do not understand that state whatsoever.
That is an interesting mix. I want to show you a clip of Jake Tapper of CNN. Jake is not good at hiding his emotions, and that's one of my favorite things about him. Let me show you a clip of the CNN exit poll in Georgia. The exit poll is exactly what it sounds like. People coming out of the vote, they've just voted, and you ask them various questions, including about their demographics. I don't know how accurate they are, but they're the best instrument that we have. Here is Jake Tapper reacting to Georgia. Georgia, a very contentious state. You might recall there was legal battles over the integrity of the election there. Do you have that video, Efron? Here, let's take a look. It's not a huge thing, but it shows the exit polls. There's been a shift in Georgia. Take a look.
Joe Biden won independent voters in Georgia when he won the state by 9 points. So we've seen a swing of 20 points towards Trump in terms of the margin, from 9-point advantage 4 years ago with independents for Biden to now an 11-point advantage with independents for Trump in Georgia. Jake.
Wow. David Chang.
Joe Biden.
I mean, that's independence, and really those are the only folks that move. There's sort of a rule of thumb in politics. Don't spend your time with people you know cannot be moved. People who you know are on your side, just make sure they get out the vote. But the only people who are persuadable really are independents or the undecideds, which I always think is a small number. But what we just saw there is people who are not so partisan that they register as either party. They have swung 20 points over to Trump. I find that incredible, and I find that hopeful.
And you know, Ezra, I'm old enough to remember the 1980 election, and I can tell you this, going into the election on that year, Jimmy Carter, the incumbent president, in every major poll, it had the Democrats at a slight edge for reclaiming office. Well, we all know what happened, don't we? It was a landslide for Ronald Reagan. I'm going by memory. I think it was 589 electoral votes to 49. In 1984, it was even more of a landslide. It's unimaginable by today's terms. Reagan won every state in the union except Minnesota. What is it about Minnesota anyways? It's just unbelievable. I'm not predicting by any means a landslide. I still think this will be a close election, but those polls were completely wrong. And isn't that the big question? You alluded to the fact, Ezra, get out the vote. That's always crucial. But how accurate were these polls? And the last major polls I saw just last night at the 7 swing states, which could decide the fate of the country, Trump was leading, not by much, not even 1%, a fraction of a percent. Yeah. But compared to where he was in those 7 swing states in 2020 and 2016, that's a huge mover of the marker.
Yeah. David, it's great to catch up with you. I'm delighted that you're operating out of the Rumble studios. It is sort of crazy that they put a fence around the White House. Now, there always is a fence, and they expanded the fence, and they've had layers of fences, but they're putting another one. It's because they know their own people act like street gangs, and that's not by chance. George Soros funds the street gangs of the Democratic Party. They're the enforcers. David, we'll catch up with you again. We're going to say goodbye now because our next guest is patiently waiting in the Big Apple. And she has been busy doing streeters in that wonderful city, the city where Donald Trump made a name for himself as a great industrialist, a builder, a philanthropist, a media star, famous for saying, "You're fired" on The Apprentice, talking about New York City. And we'll say goodbye to you now, David. We're going to connect with Alexa Lavoie.
Yeah, and Ezra, I'm so glad you explained that, because when you were looking at me and you said you're fired, I thought I almost had a heart attack coming on. You're just quoting Donald Trump.
Every day's a miracle for you, David. Every single day.
It's the Christmas miracle in November.
All right, let's
Thank you,
keep
guys.
it up, David. Okay, we'll talk to you later. And let's connect whenever we have the connection. Go ahead and put Alexa Lavoie on. I'm not sure if she's live right now. In fact, while we're waiting for her, why don't she had some wonderful streeters. You know what I mean by streeters? They're sometimes called vox pop, Latin for voice of the people, vox populi, or man on the street vids. And New York is amazing. I mean, Times Square, you can get so many great streeters. Now, a lot of them are not New Yorkers. I'd say a majority of the people in some parts of Manhattan, like Times Square, are tourists, either from around the world or from other parts of America. So while we're connecting with Alexa Lavoie, why don't we play some of the more colorful streeters? I mean, she bumped into the Naked Cowboy, for example. He's a fixture. I don't know if you know what I mean. It's exactly what it sounds like.
I do, yeah.
And, you know, there's some real characters there, and he's actually part of, I guess you could even call him a tourist attraction. Here's Alexa talking to the Naked Cowboy.
Who you wish to win tonight?
Well, let's just sing the song. Ready? It's election time again, my friend. Donald ship is coming in. We're taking back America. America first, it has to be to maximize our liberty. We're taking back America. You need a president by your side who stands up and says, fight, fight, fight. Taking back America. So thank God for Donald J. Trump, my friends, making America great again. We're taking back America. And let me finish with one more song. And the landslide will bring it down.
You know, yeah, I mean,
I'd like
he's
that
got
CD.
confidence. Let's give him that. Hey, Alexa, how you doing? It looks like you are, in fact, in Times Square right now. Let's pump up the audio for Alexa.
Yeah, no audio.
Oh, perfect. We got you now. Great to see you. It sounds like you've had a fun day.
It was an interesting day, I would say. That's for sure.
Now, New York City is famously liberal, and Manhattan is even more so. Now, you're in Times Square, so you have people from all around the world and all around America. What's the vibe? Have people, I mean, I would say in years past, New Yorkers who were for Trump were probably shy about it. How are they this time? I saw you interviewed some people who were proudly Republican. What did it feel like on the street?
I would say that since I'm on the ground interviewing people, I saw more Kamala Harris supporter, but I saw some Republican also for Donald Trump. And I would say that this is something new. They are not shy to show their color. They wear hats, they wear all kind of flag, or like I just saw a man that put all over his car Donald Trump flag, and it was pretty interesting. So I ran to him and asked like why he's supporting Donald Trump, and obviously that man was it was an Israeli man, and it was like, because it's good for my country and it's good for economy. And this is something that I hear a lot about economy. I think that is something that people are really looking into it. They are looking for a better change in the future. But it's really, really interesting to see both sides of the story, what they have to say.
I think right now we've got on the screen that man in that fascinating car. Here, let's listen in for your interaction on the street. That's a pretty cool roadster. Let's take a look.
What do you think of tonight? Do you think Donald Trump would win?
Trump. I would like Trump to win.
Yeah, why?
Because he's good. It's better than Camila.
Yeah. What do you think about Camila?
She's left me a lot. Just left. Trump is the best. He's good for my country too.
Yeah?
For Israel.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not sure if he would have shown that flag 4 years ago or 8 years ago. I think in recent months, people have sort of said, the heck with it. I'm going to show that I'm a Trumper. Now, obviously, New York is going to stay Democrat blue. There's just no way it's going to flip. David Menzies mentioned Ronald Reagan won California and New York and swept every place except for Minnesota. That ain't happening tonight. But I think that the fact that Donald Trump had a big rally at Madison Square Gardens in New York shows that he wants to fly the flag everywhere. Tell me, was there any enthusiasm for Kamala Harris? Here's what I've observed. Die hard. I mean, I think there's two kinds of people who vote for Kamala Harris. One are people who just hate Trump, and that's all they can't get over. They can't get over him. They hate him. They would vote for a fence post instead of him. But the other is a reluctant, low energy, low enthusiasm Kamala Harris voter who feels not great that she was the choice, who is desperate to find something about her to like but can't, who realizes she just talks in a word salad. I've seen a lot of Arab Americans and Muslim Americans say, who normally would be Democrats, saying, well, at least Trump says he's going to end Middle Eastern wars. Like, I've seen an interesting move in recent weeks from Muslim and Arab Americans towards Trump. They just think Kamala Harris is untrustworthy and will say anything to anyone. Have you seen any enthusiasm for Harris as opposed to against Trump?
Talked to, they were against Trump. They didn't want Trump at all, and they were really horrified to see Donald Trump winning tonight. Most of them, they say, is a dictator. If he's getting elected, that will be the last election. And a lot of people, most of them, they voted because they didn't like Trump, not because most of them, I asked them, what do you like of the policy? And they say, because I hate Trump, but that's not the policy. So why do you choose like Kamala Harris? And some of them, you know, they were more from the center, and they say, I'm going to vote for Kamala Harris, but because they mention the woman's rights. But I say, but what about the fact that Kamala is supporting transgender to compete against biological women? And for that, they say they disagree with her. Sorry about that. This is Times Square.
Well, Alexa, it's great to catch up with you. We have other folks we're going to say hi to, but for sure we're going to loop around back to you. Perhaps when we have more results, you can give us a feeling of the mood in New York. And again, I think in Times Square, people are probably just focused on having fun, but I think the whole world is seized with this election. So you can tell us the mood of the street as results come in.
Yes, perfect. So I see you later.
Thank you. There you have it. Alexa Lavoie, our Quebec bureau chief in the Big Apple. Wow, that's a great place.
Exciting.
Tamara Ugolini is our managing editor, and she's on standby. Let's go to Tamara, and I'm sure that she has been surfing X or Twitter like I've been sort of out of the corner of my eye. I think it's still fairly early, but I wonder if there are any results. That Georgia leaning Republican was very interesting to me. I take that as a very hopeful thing. Georgia was one of the must-win battlegrounds for Trump, and it looks encouraging.
Georgia, sorry to interrupt you, boss. Georgia is leaning deeper Republican right now than Florida is. I see Fox News has called Indiana, Kentucky, and West Virginia for Trump. Vermont, perplexing me to no end, has been called
you
for
gotta
Harris.
give up Vermont's Democrats to come. Now, West Virginia, I think it's actually statistically the most conservative state in the union. I think that they actually beat out Wyoming and Utah for right-wingedness. So no surprise there.
Well,
let's go to
Trump
Tamara. I see her oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think a lot of that is lending towards Trump's strong support of the coal industry and fracking there.
Let's bring in Tamara, our managing editor, who has been watching the election closely. Is there anything we can chew on at this point, or is it all still just too preliminary?
You know, Ezra, I think it's really early to say. I mean, there's a nice lead here, but as has been discussed so far, that's in certain jurisdictions where Trump has really benefited. And I mean, I personally would argue that he has benefited the world, and we've seen the demise of things like peacekeeping efforts over the last 4 years, and the increase in, censorship and changes to the way that our countries are being run. And for me personally, and in my reporting, I see the changes in the health and well-being of our society and our countries. And a big thing for me in this particular election and the ripple effect that I think it will have on Canada is in the health industry. So when Trump stated that he would be putting Robert F. Kennedy Jr. in charge of the United States Health and Human Services, the HHS, and all of its sub-agencies such as, the CDC, the US FDA, the NIH, et cetera, under his campaign Maha to make America healthy again. I think that we will start to see some of that ripple effect here into Canada, especially as our great nation sort of flips conservative has been so far and will continue to, I believe, in the coming months ahead.
I was just going to ask Sheila. Tamara, sorry, because I didn't get to talk to Alexa. So I just wanted to ask.
Oh, sorry.
No, it's okay. I'm teasing. We've got lots of chances to talk all night long, all night long. But I wanted to ask Tamara, what effect do you think that the appointment of RFK, or the potential appointment of RFK to a Trump administration, and then bringing him into the campaign, what effect do you think that had on independent voters? Because I know there are a lot of independents who look at Trump as though, like an early adopter of vaccine pushing and lockdowns, and a proponent of the things that, plagued us for nearly 3 years. So I guess my question is, what effect does RFK have on those independent voters, which are so important? I think they're the make or break.
I think it restores a level of trust, for sure, with the people who felt like Trump slighted them through Operation Warp Speed, which did allow for that fast tracking of the COVID vaccines into the arms of the United States population. But, the more I spoke to people like Paul Elias Alexander, who was part of the team of advisors to Trump during that tumultuous time in the beginnings of 2020 and the early stages of the pandemic, was that he was really misled and misguided into that decision. So take that for what it's worth. But I think that bringing in somebody like Robert F. Kennedy, who has typically always been very liberal,
I wouldn't let him near. I wouldn't let him near environment. That's for sure. But health, fine.
Yeah, and I think I saw rumblings as well that he would be part of of agriculture, and so the food, the medicines. I think that under a Trump administration, there's going to be a complete revamping of those agencies. And as we see, there was Casey Means, when she joined Tucker Carlson several weeks ago, saying 74% of Americans are now overweight or obese. That is a staggering statistic, and children especially are not much further behind. And so when you have a former Stanford trained surgeon leaving mainstream medicine, sounding the alarm on the absolute devastating toll that these policies and the way that our agencies are currently being run are having on our children, our future, it's alarming. And I think that a cleaning of house is much needed. And that's something that I'm very much excited to see moving forward under a Trump administration.
I think that not only is it exciting, not only do I like RFK Jr. because he really is what liberals were supposed to be and what they were for a generation: hopeful, loving, friendly, not so bloody divisive. And it's a kind of penance for Donald Trump for believing the Anthony Fauci's and going down that road and handing things over to Big Pharma. Trump made some errors there that I don't actually think, Trump's not very good at saying sorry, but I think putting RFK Jr. in those positions is more important than a sorry. It's a fix. And I think it would be, by the way, let me just talk about stock markets for 1 second. Efron, I just see the poly market, which is starting to reflect the results. Poly market is an enormous betting market where people put real money behind what they think the outcome will be. And my understanding is it actually has $3 billion in it, if I understand poly market. Can you put the latest on the screen, Efron? Because in the past half hour, I'm looking at the zero hedge image of it. And the presidential election market, which, go, so the top left there, click the one on the top left, you see it says presidential election winner. Exactly. So in the last moments, do you see how it has just spiked? It's just spiked. Zoom in a little bit. You see on the bottom it says all, and then 1 month, 1 week, 1 day. Click on 1 hour. Do you see to the left? Exactly. Thank you so much.
Oh, wow.
So now this is not a poll. This is not science. These are millions of people betting on the outcome. And in the last hour, you can see a great divergence. People with actual skin in the game are betting almost 70% for Trump. Now, take that as what it is. The reason this is interesting is because there's a madness of crowds, but there's also a wisdom of crowds. And everyone has their little piece of information that that perhaps they think is special, and they can decide how much they believe in it. And it's not just when you say something to a pollster, it's an opinion when you put money on it. That's stock market number one. Stock market number two, I want to see what happens to the Pfizer stock if Trump pulls ahead, because I hope Albert Bourla cashed out his shares because RFK Jr. becomes basically the health boss. I wouldn't want to be a stockholder in Pfizer. Let me put it that way.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest part of also putting someone like RFK Jr. in charge of these public health agencies, is creating that divide. Once again, separating the pharma funders from the regulators so that there is actually some independence restored again in these agencies so that they can do things like proper reviews of the actual independent and evidence-based science and make recommendations that don't kowtow to that conflict of interest riddled funder. So creating that separation, ending that revolving door of one day I work for the US FDA, the next day I work for Pfizer under Bourla. Those conflicts of interest have been happening for decades. And so to create that division again, separate those agencies from pharma and restore some independence into our regulatory bodies again.
It's great to see you, Tamara, our managing editor. You really have been on top of this file. You even went to Berlin, and you even connected very furtively with Dr. Tedros, the head of the World Health Organization. You've been on this file since the beginning, and I think you provided a real service to a great many Canadians who simply could not get that information anywhere else in the media. So it's great to see you. Thanks for joining us tonight.
As always, thank you.
Right on. I just want to check with the team to see how we're doing with one of our next commentators. He isn't on deck yet, so I want to. We're standing by for Ian Malmstrom, but I want to talk about something that I've seen several times today. Do you see that New York Post piece that I just put in the live stream chat, Olivia or Efron? If you want that, put that on the screen. Over the last month or two, I've gotten to know the Amish community here in Canada. The Amish are very reclusive, modest farmers who are very Christian, and they have a peculiarity, a characteristic, which is they eschew the modern lifestyle. They do not have phones. They do not have TVs. They don't have electricity. They don't even drive. They have horse and buggies. And there's certain extra strict Amish that don't even have rubber on their tires. Right. Like it's quite something. Mm-hmm. And Rebel News has been helping them tell their story, and the Democracy Fund helping to fight for them because they got into trouble. They didn't download the COVID app on their smartphone. They don't even know what those words mean. They were crossing the border. Anyways, so I've gotten to know the Amish a little bit. And one of the things I've learned about the Amish is they're submissive to authority. They're pacifist. They do not fight. They take extremely literally the biblical passage to turn the other cheek.
And they're completely apolitical. They don't engage in politics that's of the world, and they are not to be of the world. And so they don't normally engage in politics until, I guess, politics comes for them.
Right. And they don't interact with the government. While in Canada, they don't even have passports because they don't want they have a special piece of paper. Anyways, I want to show you just a super quick clip from a video we did a couple of years ago. When we had a reporter named Jeremy Lafredo working for us. He did a story about the Amish in Pennsylvania. First, just for 1 second, put the New York Post tweet on, and then I'm going to go to our video in a second because it's a two-part story. So here's the story in the New York Post. Amish turn out for Pennsylvania vote in unprecedented numbers. And you can see some of those horse and buggies there. And I saw a video. I didn't even think it was real. It was these horses and buggies flying Trump flags. And I thought those have got to be actors because the Amish I know would never do anything so ostentatious. But I saw an interview with an Amish man coming out of a polling place. And again, I thought Amish don't do that, but he was really Amish. And here's what it goes back to. He referred to the U.S. federal government picking on them. Let me show you 60 seconds from a video we did a couple years ago about the Amish in Pennsylvania. And I want to take a tiny bit of credit for Rebel News and our reporter at the time, Jeremy Lafredo. We sounded the alarm. We blew the whistle on what the Democrats were doing to the Amish. This story got nearly 1 million views on YouTube alone. I believe this report I'm about to show you helped activate the Amish. And if Pennsylvania is won by 10 or 20,000 votes tonight, I say the Amish did it. Take a look at this video.
Yep.
Take a look.
I'm Jeremy Lafredo for Rebel News in Birmingham, Pennsylvania. It's here in this old Amish community where armed federal agents recently raided Miller's organic meat and dairy farm. The government is arguing that the farm isn't adhering to federal regulatory requirements concerning food, while the farm argues that this is just the latest attack on independent farmers giving their communities healthy food. If you believe the federal government has no place in telling the Amish how they can prepare their healthy, nutritious food for their communities, then go to leavethemalone.com and defend the Amish. Sign our petition. Thank you.
The Miller Organic Farm in Birmingham, Pennsylvania, a remote Amish village, has been around for almost 30 years. The farm supplies everything from grass-fed beef and cheese to raw milk and organic eggs to dairy from grass-fed on-site water buffalo and all types of produce to roughly 4,000 private food club members who pay top dollar for high-quality whole food. The private food club members
I won't play the whole thing. It's a great video. It's beautiful. And Amos Miller, the farmer in question, was the same as the Amish I met in Ontario. He did not go on camera. So it's difficult to tell a story when the central character of it won't go on camera. But his story was so shocking and terrifying to the Amish, they decided that for the survival of their community, they had to vote. I don't know if that's unprecedented. In Canada, the site of Amish campaigning, it would be so startling. No one would have seen it before. I just wanted to tell you that Rebel story. We were there for the underdog. And wouldn't that be something if the underdog helped choose the top dog? Anyways,
just before you move on from that, yeah, it reminds me of when Rachel Notley here in Alberta tried to impose Bill 6, which is bankers' hours on family farms. And it shocked me as someone who lives in and around Hutterite communities, which are they're similar to the Amish in that they keep to themselves a little bit, but they're not technophobes, but they are also completely apolitical most of the time. And then I saw the Hutterite families turning up in droves to protest the government, speaking out at public meetings against the government. So when the government does overreach, I guess the moral of the story is even the meekest amongst us will stand up and fight back.
Isn't that great? Well, I tell you, I hope the Amish help put it over the top. That'll be one for the history books. Well, I see on deck is a Rebel News alumnus who sometimes he's in the most exotic places in the world, but it's sort of like in the movie Up in the what was that called with George Clooney? I think it's called Up in the Air. When he was asked by the pilot when he got his 7 million mile, where do you live? He said, I live up here in the plane. If you ask Ian Miles Chong where he lives, he would probably say he lives in cyberspace. He is one of the most active users of X, formerly Twitter, and he often is caught bantering with the owner, Elon Musk himself. What a pleasure to welcome back to Rebel News our alumnus, Ian Miles Chong. Ian, great to see you again.
Likewise, happy to be here. This is an amazing night, and things are looking fantastic for Donald Trump, and I hope it stays that way.
I do too. And I think that the number one factor is not money. It's not mainstream media. It's not even a campaign strategy. I think the number one factor is Twitter or X itself. What do you think about that theory?
100%. I think Elon Musk saved democracy. I mean, assuming Trump wins, right? Assuming nothing goes wrong. But I think it made a big difference. I think it's making a huge difference because without X, Trump wouldn't have this massive platform for which to, campaign. No one would be allowed to campaign on his behalf either, right? So I think it's made a massive difference. And we're seeing a huge shift in the way that the media covers this stuff because they are fact-checked in real time. Anytime they make something up, right? Like before, they would be able to get away with it. We saw this with the Hunter Biden laptop story. We saw it with the Russian disinformation story. That just spread like wildfire, and there was like no counterpoint to it. But now, when they make up a story, and they made up like 5-10 different stories in the past 2 weeks alone, and we have countered that instantly to the point where you have people like Anderson Cooper and Jake Tapper on CNN taking those talking points that we put out there to counter the lies and disinformation that are being, pushed by less journalistic people like Joe Scarborough.
Yeah, I love that. Go ahead, Sheila.
No, I was just going to ask Ian, we know, I think, the role that Elon Musk has played in this election, sort of unchaining information from the constraints of big tech censorship and the mainstream media, who are by and large just proxies of the government at this point. But what happens to X if Trump loses? What do you think these angry, bitter Democrats are going to do to that company and Elon Musk?
Well, a number of things. I think it gets shut down. I think at first they'll come after it. They'll try to censor it. They'll try to impose a censorship regime on X, as well as any other social media platform that dares to step out of line. That will be the first step. And then they will try to divest Elon Musk from ownership of X. They'll say that he, has a monopoly, and they'll do the same thing to his ownership of SpaceX, for Tesla, Boring Company, Neuralink, etc. They will destroy this man. And so he is putting everything on the line to make sure this doesn't happen, not just for his own sake, but for the sake of all Americans, for all humans even.
Yeah, and we saw Rachel Maddow talking about how the government must cancel his space contracts. It has nothing to do with Twitter, but it has everything to do with Twitter. Just incredible. There's one more thing that Elon Musk did that I think is extremely important, and I think, Ian, it probably is close to your heart also. We all know people who were unpersoned, canceled, suspended by Twitter, not for saying anything illegal or criminal, but for saying something that offended the political sensibilities of the former owners. And some of them, many of them were tiny people in terms of public platform. Others were huge. Alex Jones, like him or hate him, he had a huge profile. Tommy Robinson in the United Kingdom. Savannah Hernandez, one of the best journalists in America. And so by reviving hundreds or maybe thousands of people and normalizing the idea that we can disagree, I think Elon Musk not only fixed those hundreds of problems, but he sort of repudiated cancel culture itself. I think that is one of the reasons why Trump supporters have a new courage and a boldness, is because Elon Musk has ended the mean girls game of canceling. I think that's a huge thing. What's your take on that?
100%. I think that it used to be impossible to go outside and claim to be a MAGA supporter in a place like New York City. Now, I have a lot of friends living in NYC, and they're walking around with their MAGA caps and they're getting high fives from other Trump supporters. That's how much it has changed. It's no longer unacceptable to be a deplorable person, right? It's like, no, obviously they're not actually deplorable. But the point is, I think Elon Musk has made it acceptable to talk about these issues and not cancel people for having opinions that should be common sense. Like, it's not okay to mutilate the genitals of a child. It's not okay for men to play women's sports. You have J.K. Rowling out there speaking, the quiet part out loud, and millions of women are agreeing with her, to the point where politicians have to back down because, in the UK, it's obviously a massive issue and they're all trying to be woke, but they're getting this huge pushback to the point where Keir Starmer himself is out there acting as if he is in support of women and that he doesn't agree with the transgender ideology. So Elon Musk has changed a lot, and under the previous regime, I think Elon Musk's days were numbered, right? J.K. Rowling, she would have been banned for what she's posting right now. She's openly attacking these trans activists, and previously they would just complain and get her banned or censored or something, right? Now you can just simply say it, and you can say the word retard again, and it's not going to get you canceled.
Well, I remember when I was at the World Economic Forum, the two men they hated the most in order was Donald Trump, number one, and Elon Musk, number two, because they were related. Last question to Sheila.
What becomes of, I guess, big tech stranglehold on the United States, the flow of information, if the Democrats win? Are we going to see stronger censorship on, as if you could get stronger censorship on Meta? Are we going to see YouTube and the alphabet companies come in line? Like, where do we go from here? Because I think this is the free speech election. Yeah.
They've already created plans to create what is essentially the Ministry of Truth. Right? They're not calling it the Ministry of Truth. They're calling it the Information Department, the Department of Information, something to that measure. It's something very Orwellian, kind of like the Center for, for Destroying Hate or whatever, right? They use these Orwellian terms, and they've already created plans to do so and implement it under a Kamala Harris regime. So I think that it only gets worse, where they will decide what is allowed to be said, what the media itself, the current media that even supports them, what they're allowed to report on. So anything that goes against the agenda, that goes against the establishment, that questions the official narrative, that will be shut down as disinformation. And social media platforms just don't stand a chance. X would be the first to be deplatformed, and Elon Musk would be in a heap of trouble. I think they would literally destroy his life, knowing that they can do so without any sort of repercussions.
I think they would give him the Trump treatment. They would try and jail him. He's the biggest man in the world, money, power, fame, but no one's too big to be taken down by the deep state. I think he really is fighting for his own life. He's more or less said so.
Yeah. Because the state has a monopoly on violence.
Well, it's great to catch up with you. I really think that this has been the election of Twitter. The last election was the election of Facebook, YouTube, Google. They just were more silent about it. That's the thing. People are saying Elon Musk is partisan. Actually, he's not. He's balanced. It's the silent killers, the silent censors of YouTube that have really been. This is the one anomaly. Everyone else has been part of the fix for years. Great to see you again. Thanks for joining us tonight.
Likewise.
Right on there, you have it, Ian Mouse Chong, an alumnus who lives in the cyberspace battles of Twitter X. It's nice to catch up again. All right. Well, I see it is 8:11 p.m. Eastern Time, 6:11 p.m. Mountain Time, and everything in between. I think that our next guest, let me confirm, is down in Florida, and I think he's in a slightly different location. Oh, you know what? I see another guest who's on standby. Efron, who are we going to go to next? We got so many balls in the air, so many people. I am delighted. We're having a bit of a change up here. I didn't mention this guest earlier, I don't think. I would call him America's leading anti-communist. Now, She Van Fleet will be joining us later, and she's probably a close second. But someone who has studied the doctrine and modernized the vocabulary and helped explain how wokeism is in fact cultural Marxism is our next guest. Dr. James Lindsay, one of our favorite guests on the Ezra Levant Show, joins us now. What a pleasure to see you again, Dr. James. Thanks for joining us on this exciting night.
Yeah, thanks, Ezra. What's up?
Well, you tell me. I'm based up here in the snowy north. It's not quite snowy where I am, but we have reporters in New York City, Washington, D.C., and Florida. And, of course, we, like people around the world, are riveted by what we see in America. But you, of course, live there and interact with a lot of activists on the front lines. Why don't you start by giving us sort of a summary of the campaign? I think it's gone remarkably well. But what do I know? I'm up here in Toronto. You tell me.
No, I think it's gone remarkably well. Also, it had an apparently slow start through the summer and the end of the summer, but it's just been kind of a tidal wave ever since. It's been a lot of enthusiasm, a lot of excitement everywhere I go, which I don't know how many states that's been, even Alaska, which, by the way, was snowy. Tons of enthusiasm in Florida, enthusiasm. You name the state, I'm seeing Trump mania basically everywhere. So I'm hoping that reflects in the election tonight, or in the vote turnouts at least.
Now, I talked a little bit about communism because you actually are a philosophical expert in it. Some people throw around that term as an insult, which I think it should be used as an insult from time to time, but it is actually a technical science. Would you agree with this statement that in terms of the actual definition of communism as a political system, as a philosophy, as a legal system, Kamala Harris is a communist? Is that an accurate statement?
Yeah, that's an absolutely accurate statement. Most of her kind of big lines, whether it's about pushing for equity, where she says that we have to aim for equal outcomes, that was some of her stuff that she put out campaigning in 2020. As a matter of fact, it was some of the stuff she put out after she became vice president with Joe Biden. All of these ideas are communist in their orientation. Equity is a program that was called Actual Equality in the Soviet Union. She said very recently in a appearance that you have to stay woke. It doesn't matter if you're going to be, less woke or more woke or woke or woker or wokest. You just need to be more woke and you need to stay woke. Well, woke is communism. It turns out that her father was a communist. She runs around saying her favorite little tagline, which she kind of stopped saying after we called her out for it and said what it was, which is being able to see what can be unburdened by what has been, which is the exact essence of what Karl Marx said his political program and the political revolutions of the 19th century should look like in his 18th Brumaire of Louis Bonaparte in 1852. And then I just found out today that she actually was involved in a communist organization when she was in college. I think she was involved in actually a communist club at her university. So yeah, the woman's a Marxist. And so Marxism's on the ballot, and hopefully America can vote its way out of communism before it gets its claws all the way in.
Sheila, jump in.
I was just looking at James's X account, and already it seems as though the dirty tricks are starting to roll in. Looks like there's a gas leak at one polling station, and non-citizens on the voter rolls. We have to be very careful because we're currently broadcasting on the censorship platform of YouTube while simultaneously streaming to Rumble, and there are things that we can say over there that we can't say on the other platform. Well, what impact do you think these dirty tricks will have, or are people more attuned to them now?
Well, they will have some impact. You mentioned the gas leak. I believe that's in Michigan. There are all kinds of weird evacuations taking place across Pennsylvania. One of the counties in Pennsylvania, in fact, had its voting extended by 2 hours because of the machines not working right throughout the day. People have been being turned out all day saying things aren't working, things won't print right, whatever, come back later, fill out a provisional ballot. We'll take care of it. There are similar problems, bomb threats being called in at various places. Georgia is particularly bad for that, but they've also been in other places. The really remarkable thing to point out about this is that they're only happening in swing states. It's happening in virtually all of the swing states, and it's not happening anywhere else, which is a remarkable coincidence. And that it's been happening since like 7 a.m. this morning is another kind of just a remarkable coincidence. So it will have some impact because there will be people who showed up to vote who didn't have time, who had to go back to work, or who gave up and couldn't do what, the true difficult patriotic duty of standing in line longer, making sure that their vote gets counted. And so some of those people will end up having been turned away. On the other hand, it will not have the kind of impact that I think the people might expect that it might, or fear that it might, because it's all being caught. Legal experts, lawyers are intervening. That the courts are intervening. That's why this county in Pennsylvania has longer hours tonight. And so a lot of it's being caught as it's happening, and adjustments are being made, which is a distinct difference from what was going on in 2020, where we were all kind of biting our nails and sipping our bourbon and hoping things were going to work out. There's a lot more people on the ground keeping their eyes open and making sure things are working out today. So I'm hoping that the impact will be not zero, but minimal.
Our friend Harmeet Dillon, one of the most, I think she's a really smart lawyer. She's based in San Francisco. It's got to be tough to be a Republican in San Francisco. I predict she'll become Trump's White House counsel if he becomes president. I know that she has led the charge for voting irregularities I think she's in Arizona tonight. I think there are literally armies of lawyers. They have been threatened, by the way. Every one of them has faced a threat that they would be disbarred and prosecuted the same way Trump's lawyers were. So it takes courage to stand up to the menace. And let me say this, there were at least 3 assassination attempts that we know of. One, the spectacular one that missed Donald Trump by half an inch. And if you are willing to murder the president, of course you're willing to turn off a power switch, or I see storm some voting location. Like you're literally willing to murder the president of the United States. Of course you'll do anything up to that as well. And I don't know. I agree with you, Dr. James, that there is a enthusiasm and a momentum out there. The question that I have been thinking about for weeks is it larger than the margin of cheating, than the margin of lawyer? And what do you think about that? It's a little early to say, but do you think that the enthusiasm will overcome the cheat factor?
Well, that's the question. And so people have been asking me my election prediction for, the last, well, for months, but actually kind of poignantly for the last week or so. And even today, I said the same exact prediction. I am mostly confident that an election will still take place. I'm not 100%. I think it's almost done in Eastern time, but I'm still not 100% certain on that. So I don't make any guesses about what the outcome are going to be. What I can say for certain is that you have characterized the question correctly, and I can say also for certain that I have never seen this kind of enthusiasm for a political candidate in my life. I have never seen the lines at the voting locations, the polling locations have been insane, at least here, even in Tennessee, which is virtually guaranteed to go to Donald Trump by a wide margin. Every day from the first day of early voting, you would wait anywhere between an hour and a half and 3 hours just to be able to get in the door pretty much every single day. I've never seen turnout like this. And that enthusiasm has translated into today as we're seeing pictures from all over the United States, people showing up to vote in person on election day, even despite these challenges, and people standing in line for hours and hours and hours to, amidst these disruptions to cast their vote, and I think we can guess in many cases for Donald Trump. So I think it's possible. I think that too big to rig or swamp the vote initiatives that the Republicans and conservatives and normal people across the country, former Democrats, people of all stripes, people of all religions, people of all colors, people of all sexualities pouring out to vote for Donald Trump might actually be enough to break the machine.
Wow. Me, Dr. James, I would talk to you for an hour if I could, but we have a tight schedule tonight. We have so many amazing guests on standby. Before we go, what's the best way for people to follow your work? Is it newdiscourses.com? Is that your website?
Yeah, that's the website, and at Conceptual James on social media.
Great. Thanks so much for making us part of your evening, and good luck out there.
Thanks, Ezra.
All right, Dr. James Lindsay. Hey, Sheila, we do have some sponsors, and I would love for you to, it's sort of exciting. I mean, I'm just looking at the different platforms here. We've got, at this very moment, over 7,100 people following us on the Twitter stream. We have over 4,000 people following us on the Rumble stream, and YouTube, where we have 1.7 million subscribers, is throttling us. We have far more subscribers on YouTube than on, frankly, all other platforms combined, but only 700 people watching us there. That's simply not true. If you have 1.7 million people subscribe and you're going live on the newsiest night of the year, you don't have 700 viewers unless YouTube is putting their thumb on the scale. And that's what life was like until Elon Musk bought X. We would have 1.7 million subscribers, 1.7 million people say, yeah, show me the rebel stuff. 700 watching.
Right.
I mean,
impossible.
I love our YouTube viewers. I hate the fact that we're being kept away from them by Google. And boy, do I hope Donald Trump trust busts their ass.
I was going to say, trust bust them like the Democrats would do to Elon. Yeah. Use the hammer on him. Yeah. We do have a message from Positive. If you have a dog, and mine is currently under my desk at all times, we've all been there. Our pup goes from full of energy to sick and miserable in an instant and at the worst of times. Then we're calling vets in the middle of the night or on weekends trying to find a clinic that will take us in. It's a terrible way to manage your dog's health, not to mention your stress levels and your monthly budget. That's why people are getting the Pet Emergency Kit by Positive. That's PAWSITIVE. It contains critical medications and supplies that can not only keep you out of the veterinary office, but may even save your life. Their kits contain critical medications like activated charcoal, styptic powder, and more. Might just save your dog's life. Head on over to positive.com and use the code STUDIO to get 15% off your Pet Emergency Kit. And we do have some chats. A bunch of them, actually. We've got one from Shauna Marie G83. She's a regular chatter, supporter of the show. She also points out exactly what Ezra just did. 4.1 thousand people watching and only 156 likes. Please take a moment to like this live stream to help with the algorithm, fellow freedom fighters. That is very helpful. And do one more kindness for me, if you wouldn't mind. Take the link, share it. Share it. Share it to your friends, post it to X, wherever you're using social media. Tell people where you're watching your news and analysis tonight. Steven797 gives us $5 and says, what do you think about Danielle Smith's response to the emissions cap announced by Ottawa? She's going to sue them. She's going to invoke the Sovereignty Act. She's been pretty winning up against the feds as of late, and I don't know what more she can do. The good news is that the emissions cap, which is really a cap on oil and gas production, it will move at the speed of government, which means it probably won't be implemented until late 2025, according to Stephen Guilbeault's own timeline, which he should be back in the environmentalist activist sector, scaling some poor woman's house in an effort to frighten her into green energy, if I know Stephen Guilbeault. So that's what's happening. I appreciate her response. The good news is that the Liberals work very, very slowly on this sort of stuff.
Thanks, Sheila. You know, the whole world is watching this, not just Americans, of course. Americans are the ones who get to make the decision, and they will be the ones who live under the decision, but actually the whole world will too. We're going to have an election in Canada most likely next year, and that will change a lot for us. But what happens south of the border will likely have as much of an impact. And if you think that's true for Canada, imagine how true that is for Russia or for the People's Republic of China. Vladimir Putin said he looks forward to hearing the details of Donald Trump's plan for Ukraine and Russia should Trump win. I think a lot of people would like to see what those details are. But one country that has been quite quiet, at least openly, even if they have been working furiously behind the scenes, is China. And there's no one who knows more about the, I guess Kremlinology would be the wrong term, but what's going on in the Communist Party of China than our next guest. His name is Gordon G. Chang. He's an expert on the subject. He's the author of Plan Red, China's Project to Destroy America. And he joins us now via Skype. Gordon, great to see you again. Thanks for taking time on this momentous night. First of all, before I ask you about China and what they feel about the election, how do you feel about the election? How is it going so far? And you care about national security and freedom for America. How's it looking so far?
Well, it's still too early to tell. Basically, in the early stages of voting in the U.S., the Democrats are going to be ahead because they have focused on early voting. This year, for the first time, the Republicans have decided to bank the vote. But the early returns we're seeing are strongly in favor of Harris. That will change, though, as the election day voting comes in, because that probably will be red. That'll be Republican. So still right now, we need another couple hours before we get a real sense of where we are.
Well, I mentioned earlier that Vladimir Putin says he's open. He thinks that Donald Trump is sincere in his desire to have a resolution. He wants to hear the details. I'm not sure what that means exactly. There's some evidence that the Russians prefer the Democrats. They invaded Ukraine when Barack Obama was president, and invaded when Joe Biden was president, not when in the Trump interregnum. But how about China? What are they thinking tonight? How will the result change China-U.S. relations if it's a Kamala Harris win versus a Donald Trump win? What will change for China?
Well, if it's a Kamala Harris win, every new American president gives China a grace period. So I think that they'll get a longish grace period, especially because Tim Walz, who is very pro-China, will be her vice president. This is a critical time where we need to move quickly. So this would not be good for the United States. Trump's already been president, of course. He has suffered from China, which actually tilted the scales against him in 2020. He probably remembers that. So I suspect that he's going to be a lot less friendly, and there's certainly going to be a much shorter grace period. My sense, Ezra, is that regardless of all of this, the Chinese really don't want to see Trump near the Oval Office, because it's not so much his policies, though they don't like those, but it's because he's unpredictable. And they can deal with a hostile American president, but they can't deal with one they can't control. And I think that although Biden has done things that the Chinese don't like, they've always felt that they could work with him. They could deal with him on some level. I don't think they believe that about Trump.
Give me one more word about Tim Walz, because when I heard he had visited China 30 times, I was shocked by that. I learned a little bit more. It was an exchange program, but those exchange programs were not politically neutral. They were information gathering. They were for developing contacts. We later learned that Tim Walz had a romantic relationship when he was over there, and I'm not saying that was necessarily a sign of a spy. I'm not saying he is a Manchurian candidate, but he's certainly, like, 30 times. There's no country in the world I visited 30 times other than my own home country. I mean, that's an astonishing number of trips. He probably knows a little bit of Chinese. He probably has dear friends over there. Talk a little bit about that. That's not necessarily a bad thing, but it could be a really bad thing. What do you make of it?
Yeah, in Tim Walz's case, it's really, really bad, because in the 1990s and the following decade, he was taking American high school students to China to be exposed to Communist Party propaganda. And that activity could not have occurred without the approval of the Communist Party's United Front Work Department, which is the part of the party that subverts foreign governments. Now, Tim Walz can't say that he's a knucklehead, which is the term that he used for himself on a number of occasions. And the reason is because as governor of Minnesota, in other words, right now, he's had continuous contact with Communist Party front organizations. And he actually appointed a Communist Party agent to a state government board in Minnesota. So I think that there are really disturbing signs. And I've always felt that his presence on the ticket meant that Americans should not vote for Kamala Harris, no matter what they thought about Harris or Trump. You just can't have someone who could very well be a communist to be one heartbeat away from the Oval Office.
Yeah. You can call a gaffe a knucklehead moment. I'm a klutz. But when you do something again and again for 30 years, you can't write that off to being a klutz. That's who you are. We just heard from Dr. James Lindsay, who says philosophically, Kamala Harris could be described as a communist, and in the form of her vice presidential candidate, someone who is practically working with the communists. Sheila, you've been studying Chinese election interference in Canada. We've had a judicial inquiry into the subject here in Canada. Are there any parallels in the United States? Gordon, is there anything that has been observed in terms of Chinese government bussing in voters or choosing voters? Does it happen in the same way in America as it has in Canada?
I don't know if it's really the same way. I mean, you've had problems with China in Canada, certainly favoring candidates who were opposing people they didn't like. But in the United States right now, in this election cycle, the Chinese have not really shown their hand too much in the presidential contest, but they've been directly involved in down ballot contests. And it's not just down ballot Senate or House of Representatives. In June, China was weighing very heavily against the incumbent in the Democratic Party primary for an assembly seat in the state of New York, which shows you just how much attention they've paid to all the candidates in the United States. So they've been very involved in this election cycle, though it's been different than it was in 2020, where their interference was more obvious at the presidential level. This time it's much more obvious down ballot.
Gordon, I want to ask you about some of China's other activities in the world and the impact of Trump potentially being the next president, what that would have on mitigating or negating some of those efforts. For example, what does the Trump election mean for Taiwan? What does it mean for China's involvement in sort of meddling in the Middle East by, backing Iran to attack Israel? Does a Trump election sort of tone some of that down?
Yeah, the Sunni Arab world, especially in the Gulf, is very, they won't say it in public, but they very much want Trump to win. And that's precisely because of what you were talking about, that Biden has been a supporter of Iran, and Iran has been the enemy of the Sunni Gulf Arabs. In Western Europe, you have leaders very much pro-Biden. largely because Biden leaves them alone and says what they want to hear. And Trump has not been doing that. In Asia, I think that our allies probably would like Trump more than they would like Harris. Certainly the Japanese would feel that way. South Koreans, I'm not so sure how they would end up on that one, because they didn't like Trump's outreach to North Korea. But as I mentioned, the big country in the region, China, I think very much worrying about a Trump presidency.
Gordon, it's great to catch up with you again. Thank you for fitting us in on your election night. It's going to be a long night, and perhaps it won't even be just one night. It may be days, but we'll be here very, very late and hoping for the best for America and the world.
Well, thank you so much, Ezra and Sheila. Thank you.
Take care. There you have it, Gordon G. Chang. You've got to follow him on Twitter. His book is called Plan Red, China's Project to Destroy America. I think that Donald Trump, as hard as it is to square it with his brash personality, is the candidate of peace. And I think that's why Democrats like RFK Jr. and Tulsi Gabbard like him. I saw a bunch of interviews from Muslim Americans and Arab Americans who were warming. And how could you warm to Trump? First of all, he's such a pro-Jewish guy, pro-Israel guy.
Mm-hmm.
How could an Arab American support that? Well, I think it is true that I think we all know Trump is going to tamp down the Middle East, and that will mean less casualties on all sides, including on the Arab side. And what's so astonishing to me, like, I mean, I'm older than you, Sheila, but I remember Dick Cheney was considered positively satanic by the Democrats.
Yes.
I mean, it was his gruff style and his sort of scowling smile. And he was such a, well, to use a word, a warmonger. And, that time he accidentally shot a friend in the face.
He did shoot a guy.
Yeah. I mean, he was ridiculed and caricatured and despised by the Democrats. They hated no one. They hated him far more than they hated George Bush Jr. Far more. And yet now they're toasting him as this wise eminence grise. And Liz Cheney, I see the banter on The View. I think they want to make her the head of the CIA. And if you're an Arab American, you see the Iraq war a bit differently than Americans. You see 1 million Iraqis killed. Now, Americans would say, well, don't go to war. But I mean, there were a lot of civilian deaths there, and there are a lot of civilian deaths in Gaza. There just are, and I would argue, don't pick a fight, don't pick a terrorist fight with Israel. But I think Arab Americans think Trump will bring peace, and I think he will. He didn't start any wars in the 4 years he was president, and neither did Putin, and neither did Xi Jinping. No one tried it. Neither did the Ayatollahs. No one tried it. That's that wildness. That's that. No one knows what Trump's going to give you, so everyone's better behaved.
Well, and I think Trump used his negotiating style to bring about peace in the Middle East. Remember when we were in Dubai, and we were on a tour of Dubai, and we were discussing how the Abraham Accords came about, and we were told that Trump said to the Gulf states, the road to the White House goes through Jerusalem. So you better figure out what's happening with Israel before you come to Washington. And it worked. It worked. Peace broke out, and then now there's no peace. And, China's meddling and set to devolve the region into a large scale war. So, if you want peace, Trump is the peace president.
Yeah, isn't it funny? I think maybe Jews and Arabs can support him. Well, we have another amazing guest on standby. I'm very excited that we're reaching out to our friends at Post Millennial. Their editor-in-chief, Libby Emmons, is on standby. She's famous for her appearances on Timcast, and of course, a great journalist in her own right and on her own platform. Libby, great to see you. Welcome to our little live stream tonight.
Sure thing. Thanks for having me on, guys.
Well, it's such a pleasure. You have a unique perspective. I think you're really plugged. I think you're plugged in probably more than anyone to the GOP side of things. Well, I mean, you guys at Post Millennial and Human Events do a lot of great stuff. Tell me, I guess it's too early to say, but let me ask you this question. You got a huge country, thousands of counties, tens of thousands of polling locations. statistically, you are going to have some problems. You're going to have some malicious problems. You might even have a pipe burst here or there, although, come on. So far, do you think the number of shenanigans is manageable and correctable and not the defining characteristic? It's possible for there to be a little bit of cheating without the whole election being stolen. That's my hope. What do you think? I bet you're following those shenanigans as closely as the results themselves.
Yeah, there have been a fair number of shenanigans. It's hard to say that they are perhaps craven and malicious when incompetence could just as easily be credited with these things. In Pennsylvania, there was an election judge who showed up 40 minutes late, and so the polls opened late. They were then allowed, I believe, to stay open late. There were paperwork issues at some polling places. So Republican election watchers were not allowed in because of their paperwork things. And then that got sorted out. There were lines that were getting closing. There were early voting issues in different places. And while I think that there certainly are malicious people, I don't think that there's any kind of coordinated thing going on. I think there's a lot of incompetence. One thing that people really forget is that poll workers are temporary workers. These are positions that are advertised by the government shortly before the election, and you get, like $15 an hour, you get limited training, you go in. The people who are poll workers, typically they don't have some other job, so this is like, oh, I'm going to pick up a paycheck for a little bit. Maybe it's going to offset my unemployment or whatever else, or my other part-time jobs for a bit. It's the same thing with the door knockers, who are going around, or the people who sign up to be voter registration people who work for the voter registration, not for profits. Very limited training, limited pay, big incompetence.
I was in the United Kingdom for their general election on July 4th. It was interesting. It was on the 4th of July. And I was fascinated by let me just tell you how it was. I was in Clacton-on-Sea, which is Nigel Farage's district. They brought all the voting, all the ballots to one big room, all of them together. And they had so many scrutineers. So it must have been 100 people in this huge gymnasium. They spent hours verifying everything, then hours counting everything. The result came at 4 a.m., but that wasn't late. It was meticulous. All the candidates were there, like Nigel and they all come to the same place, have a joint sort of press conference, and there's no Dominion voting system. There's no machinery.
Yeah.
And
no, go ahead.
No, and why use the machines? Even if they work, everyone in their brain, in their bones says, is this hacked? Is this malware? Is this spyware? Because we know our systems are spying on us on our phone. You can only trust a paper and a pencil, can't you?
Yeah, I totally agree with you. In fact, I voted most of my life in New York. My very first presidential ballot was cast in New York, and then this year is the first time I voted not in New York. So that was kind of interesting, and it was a completely different process. In New York, you do vote on a paper ballot, and then you run that paper ballot through a machine, which I agree would be better hand counted, would be better just counted by people, but at least it is a paper ballot. And here I am now in West Virginia, which is totally different. They give you this card, you have to put it in a machine, you have to select your answers on a touchscreen, and then it prints it out. I don't see any reason why we can't, like you said, just have a paper ballot, a nice dark pen, and do it that way. It works for the SATs, or at least it did back in the 90s. I don't know how they do it now, but I don't see any reason to overcomplicate a process that is so essential and incorporate all of these different steps where there is room for error, malevolence, and incompetence at every step of the way. There's no reason for that. It should be much more direct.
Yeah. Libby, what role do you think the culture wars have played in the voting habits of younger voters? It's my generation. I take full responsibility for how bad things have gotten. My generation let it get that bad. But maybe it's different in the United States, but I see it in Canada. Younger voters are trending conservative and strongly conservative. What impact do they have on this election? Are they voting Trump, or are they still sort of captured by the mind virus of progressive politics? being pushed down their throats in university.
I think it's definitely a combination. My son is 14 and he leans pretty conservative at this point. You know, I'll come out and find him playing video games and listening to Matt Walsh, you know. I'm like, you know, either that or he's listening to jazz records on his record player. I have no idea what's going on. Yeah, he's a very interesting kid. But then you also do have the college kids, and I've been following Charlie Kirk's college tour this fall. He's at, like, you know, I think he hit 22 colleges and universities, which is absolutely insane. But he kept talking to all these kids, and the kids have kept coming out asking questions, you know, what about the economy, and what about, you know, foreign wars and all of these things. And it was pretty fascinating. There were a lot of instances where, at least, you know, on camera, if social media is to be believed at all, the kids were turning toward the Republican side. And I do think the culture war has a lot to do with that. At this point, if your teacher is coming in to class with purple hair and a bunch of tattoos and rainbow glasses and calling herself they, them, you're going to be like, I don't want to be like teacher. No one wants to be like their teacher. Everyone thinks their teachers are dumb. So you look at that teacher and you're like, I'm going to be the opposite of that teacher. You know, in my son's class a couple years ago, the kids were joking that they were going to identify as helicopters and force the teachers to call them, you know, helicopter pronouns. Because that's what's going on. The authority figures are the ones pushing all this garbage down the throats of these kids. And the kids don't want it. Just like when we were kids, we didn't want whatever it was they were serving up. And we were out there, you know, I was out there marching around for gay marriage, you know, or whatever else. And so, you know, marching against the Iraq War. Yeah, marching against whatever I could find, really. But the kids don't want that stuff. They want to be counterculture. And so they are veering away from what the authorities and officials are offering. And listen, with the LGBTQ and trans stuff, that's coming down straight from the White House. That's coming down straight from Ottawa. You know, that's Justin Trudeau's whole thing. And I don't think that it's landing because kids don't want to be told what to do or what to think. So they're breaking out, hopefully, and thinking for themselves.
Libby, I want to pick up on something you said. I mean, I don't know if you know our old buddy Gavin McInnes. He was a rebel for years, and he's sort of a rambunctious guy. He created the Proud Boys as a sort of fraternity where guys can be guys. He called it Western chauvinism, but it was really a fraternity for grown-ups. And then there's Jordan Peterson, and it was 12 Rules for Living, but I think it could really be called 12 Rules on How to Be a Man. In fact, Gavin made a movie called How to Be a Man. And then you got Andrew Tate and his brother, and I think there's some real asterisks you have to put next to their names. I think they actually got into human trafficking, sex trafficking, and I think you got to approach with caution. But they could see the huge market for men who want to know how to be masculine, and I think it's this reaction to feminization and everything that Kamala Harris exuded was anti-masculine. The white dudes for Harris was anti-masculine.
Yeah.
And I think that it moved from sort of a philosophical, theoretical queer theory into men wanting to be men. And Trump is as manly and macho as they get. Tim Walz is the opposite of that. And Kamala Harris feels like she's scolding you all the either cackling or scolding. I think there's some women that men would love to vote for, but I think Kamala Harris felt like and I think black men in particular found her aesthetically and emotionally repulsive. Am I wrong on that? Maybe I'm looking through things through a gender lens I shouldn't, but I feel that
Biden felt that way.
What's that?
I said, I think Biden felt that way about her.
Yeah. What do you think, Libby?
Yeah, I mean, there has been a huge gender divide. If you look at some of the polling that's been done, women have been skewing towards Kamala, while men have been leaning towards Trump, even among Democrats. So I do think that there's something to that. But it's not just Kamala Harris. that has this sort of toxic feminine thing going on. This is something we see throughout the Democratic Party. You have a party that tells men that they are not fit to be fathers, so they should make sure that their girlfriends can abort their babies. You have a party that tells men that they can swap their sex, that their sex is so malleable and insignificant to who they are that they can just change it on a whim and go along with something like that. You have a party that tells men not to defend themselves, right? I mean, look at what we have going on in New York right now. There's a man who protected an entire subway car from a deranged homeless man, and he's on trial for second-degree murder. Why? And then now I see posts from people on social media saying, why aren't the men, standing up to the crazy people on the subway? Well, ladies, it's because they're getting prosecuted for doing stuff like that. So I think it's a much deeper problem than simply Kamala Harris. And I do think men are being sold a false bill of goods in this country. And there's a lot of areas where that's true. Abortion and trans are just two of them. But with abortion, why is the message to men from Democrats? The message to men is vote for Kamala Harris for your daughter's reproductive freedom. And I'm thinking, you're telling these men to vote for a woman so that their daughter can kill their grandchildren? I mean, goodness gracious. As a parent, at this point in my life, like, all I really want is grandchildren. As I said, my son's 14, and so he laughs at me because it's absurd when I say things like mommy needs grandbabies. Of course I don't mean right now. But yeah, I think that it's a much more systemic issue with the Democrat Party that doesn't believe men are worthwhile, doesn't think men should be able to hold down jobs and support families and raise children, and doesn't even really know what a man is. So why would men be for a party that can't recognize what they are?
Yeah, I missed Matt Walsh in my list of masculine men. Sheila, last word to you.
I was just going to thank Libby for taking the time to come on the show, and congratulations on living in a Republican state so far. And best of luck tonight to the United States. Us Canadians, we're counting, at least where I'm from, on a Trump presidency for economic liberation.
Oh, that would be great. Yeah, I'm counting on it too. I'm hopeful.
Libby, what's the best way for people to follow you?
You can check out what I'm doing at Libby Emmons on Twitter. And of course, you can see what we're doing at thepostmillennial.com and humanevents.com every day.
Right on. We'll send our best to your whole team, and thanks for taking so much time with us tonight.
Sure thing. Thanks, guys.
All right, there you have it, Libby Emmons. Well, I just want to, before we go, I just want to flash a website on the screen for 1 second, because it has given me hope. The same reason I like to quote David Coletto, the pollster from Abacus, because that's a liberal affiliated polling company. So when they tell me good news, I believe it, because I'm too skeptical, because I don't want my heart broken. So I have to only take good news from my political opponents. And that's how I feel about the New York Times. The New York Times is as Democrat as they come. They're so in the tank. There's no dividing line between them and the Democrats. So look at their front page right now. Now, this is early, but you see they have these sort of thermometer, odometer things, and they're pretty good at it. I actually really enjoy the New York Times on elections, because they have so much, they have so many resources, and they're really good at the graphical presentation. So look what they're saying here. More polls close in key battlegrounds as results stream in. And do you see the needle there under the word key battlegrounds? The Electoral College estimate, they're estimating 281 to 257 for Trump. And of course, it takes 270 to win. Now, it's still early days, and you see the other needle. So the one needle is their estimate, and the other one next to it is sort of how strongly they believe in it. So as the night goes on, the needle on the right will obviously adjust, but the one on the left will get more and more certain as the uncertainty is resolved. But I find this very hopeful. Can you pump it up a little bit? Is it Georgia? Yeah, do you see we talked about Georgia? We played the little clip of the exit polls. Georgia, 58% is in. Trump is up 11? Come on. Come on. Or does that mean it was, what is that? Is that what that means?
Okay, so right now, That's up 11 from last time.
Thank you.
Right?
That's right. That's right. Thank you. I didn't get that quite right. So leaning Republican, I feel good about that. Now you can see Pennsylvania is absolutely terrifying. That's got to be really early. Harris up 37, absolutely terrifying to me. Polls still haven't closed yet in Arizona, Wisconsin, and Nevada. Those are battlegrounds for sure. I'm too
Ohio's
Go ahead.
Ohio's tending towards Trump right now, but it's still very early.
Yeah.
Next door to Pennsylvania.
So it's a little early to be hoping for anything, but it's a little grain. When the New York Times says, now maybe they're just trying to play with my heart. Maybe they're just toying with me, Sheila.
Maybe.
All right. Thanks for letting me show you that. Sheila, I interrupted you. Go ahead.
No, I was going to just breeze through some of the chats that are coming in, just out of respect to the people who put their hard-earned money in our direction to keep the lights on. We've got one from Canada Goose One, gives us $10, says if Harris is elected, they will pack the Supreme Court. That's one of the greatest things Trump ever did. Even though at the time I was not really convinced that Trump was a conservative, as long as he governed as a conservative and packed the Supreme Court with conservatives, I was happy.
But understand what pack means. Appoint is one thing. When they say pack, they would expand the court from like 9 to maybe 17. So they would destroy it for a generation by perverting it and controverting it. So that's Trump didn't pack it. He made his appointments, and I think he had 2 or 3. But pack, they mean destroy. Sorry for the interruption.
Ryerson Gary, he's also a very regular supporter of the work that we do here at Rebel News, particularly on the live stream. He gives us $5. Trouble with the voting machines in Pennsylvania, so here we go. I wonder how many bags of mail-ins will magically appear when the folks get back to work in the morning. Last election, 800,000 for Biden. Very British Columbian of these folks. Shauna Marie G83 gives us $10. Ezra Sheila, we love you. Thank you for always bringing us the truth and for fighting for freedom. You're very welcome. And I think I have to go back a couple more. Sorry. Shauna Marie G83, $20. Nope, we did that one. So I think we're good. Oh, Steven 797, $20. I've been checking out Fox and CNN. They're calling certain states with only 2% of the vote counted. How can they do that? I don't know. I don't know how these certain news sites do their vote projections and how they call them. I just look at how the votes are coming in. That's it. I don't know how they can do it with 2% of the vote. I have no clue. Okay, Ezra, I think we're all caught up.
Got it. I'm just scanning for. It's still so early. I don't want to put. You know what? I remember in 2016, staying up, I think, till 3 a.m. because I refused to let myself go to bed optimistic that Trump won, only to wake up disappointed. I didn't want that emotional turmoil. So I stayed up, I think, till 3 a.m. till I was.
We were here together.
Yeah, completely sure. Let's go to our friend Yankee, who is down there in Florida on standby. He's actually, our friend Avi is inside Mar-a-Lago, but Yankee's on the outside, and it's just as exciting on the outside. Let's go to him now. Yankee, can you hear us?
I can indeed. Hi.
Now tell us where you are. I see lots of flashing lights. Is that a barrier or a blockade? Is some emergency incident, or is it just the excitement of Florida?
It's well, I'm right across the street of where Trump is holding his election night party and presumably victory party. It's about 10, I would say 5 to 10 minutes away from Mar-a-Lago. It's at the Palm Beach Convention Center, and there's a lot of fun going on here. Not as much people as I thought will be, but there are people periodically, cars driving, honking, screaming Trump or F Trump or stuff like that. But there's there's people out here hoping that Trump will win. I did interview quickly one Harris supporter that came out. So that's pretty much what's going on out here.
Now, we have a couple of videos that you filmed while you were outside. Let's play a couple of those back to back just to get a bit of a flavor of the passersby. You know, there's a Twitter account called Florida Man, and it's just a collection of funny headlines like Florida man found naked with alligator, like Florida man, as if they're talking about the same man every time. And what I love about that Twitter account is it's just all the crazy things that happen on any given day in Florida. So let's take a look at some of these Florida men. Take a look.
Really? Okay, thank you.
All right, that's just sort of background footage, but we do have, and that's interesting too. I saw a jumbotron truck, and of course, you
Love
know,
those.
truck
We love them.
from one truck lover to another. I love those things. You know, we should have, you know what? We should have had our Rebel News truck just driving around Toronto with some Trump messaging tonight. Kidding around, here are some folks that you actually interviewed briefly as they walked by in Florida. Let's take a look.
Trump, forget Harris. Forget. I am from Greece, but I'm all for Trump. No, Makala. She's an idiot.
No, you can't say that.
Yeah, well, all right, forget that.
Okay, you can't say that.
She's still an idiot.
You don't have a brain if you're going to vote for her.
Trump.
Trump.
We're the Vance family.
Yes.
We're bringing home a win. No.
He's going to win tonight. God bless America.
Feeling awesome.
Gonna win tonight. Feeling positive. Trump.
Trump
24? 2024.
Yep.
And then Vance 2028.
Trump.
Well, that's a fun one. I mean, Florida really has changed. I give a lot of credit to Ron DeSantis for running such a, and you know what? During the lockdowns, Florida was the free place. And so freedom lovers from all around America, and indeed even from Canada, went there, magnifying its freedomness. We've got a couple more clips, Yankee, that you recorded. Let's play a couple of those just while I see they're lined up here. Let's play one or two more quick ones.
I'm a Democrat. I'm 82. I'm from Miami Beach. I'm born there. I would like to support the president. He supports Israel. And Biden and Kamala are with the Muslims in Iran that want to destroy Israel. So that's my starting point. And then we have everything else they've touched has been a complete disaster. And why are we going through this insanity to have the most incompetent person on the planet running as a Democrat? Have they completely lost their mind when she's not lying every 5 seconds? Open borders. What are we talking about? I don't get it anymore. And I'm a Democrat, and I can't stand it one more second. I'm never going to vote for another Democrat again. And my message to the Republicans, find a spine and learn how to fight back. Trump's fighting back. What's the problem with the rest of you?
Wow.
Good for you, Yankee, for finding a Democrat convert to Trump. That's how it works. I think you've got one more clip of an African American expressing his support for Trump. I think they're actually driving by in a car, if I'm not mistaken. Do we have one more video, Olivia? Let's take a look. That went by sort of, I think that's a Rolls Royce. Is that a Rolls Royce, Yankee?
It definitely looked like a Rolls Royce. And they were afterwards. They actually came out and they were giving interviews and speaking to people about their support of Donald Trump. Actually, speaking about the numbers earlier, I actually looked at 2016. Trump won Florida by 49 to 47. In 2020, he won 51 to 47. And DeSantis won in 2018. 49.95 to 49.15, and then percentage points for 2022, DeSantis won 59% to 39, almost 40%. And tonight, I saw the numbers earlier, it's still not settled, but Trump seems to have won around 56% to 43%.
Well, Yankee, thank you for filming those Florida man and Florida women clips on the street there. And we'll come back to you. You yourself are a Florida resident, our rebel on the scene. Thanks for your update, Yankee.
Thank you.
All right. Sheila, what's next? Do we have some more ads, perhaps? Or do we have some more Rumble rants to read? You tell me. I've sort of lost track of where we are.
We are all caught up on the chats. Efron, do we have an ad read to do? Or maybe we have a Rebel News ad break. Great.
Here's a message from our friends at Goldco. You know, Joe Biden may have dropped out of the race, but he's not done just yet. Will he jam through his hidden tax trap at the last second, right before he goes? Where he could raid your retirement funds, supercharge your income taxes, increase your utility and gas prices, and inflate costs on things you need to live. Some or all of this could affect you or your family in one way or another. I'm telling you, if you wait and see, you may as well kiss your retirement savings goodbye. The good news is you can get prepared, but you better hurry. Reach out to Goldco today to learn how precious metals could help protect you and your family. They're offering you a free 20 to 25 gold and silver kit, plus up to a 10% instant match in bonus silver on qualified accounts. All you have to do is visit Rebel News 4, that's the number 4, gold.com, rebelnews4gold.com. Your retirement funds, income taxes, gas prices could all be affected. Visit rebelnews4gold.com. It's rebelnews4gold.com.
What if governments are trying to reinvent the wheel when the greatest teacher of all times has already laid out the perfect blueprint for a constitution for a kingdom of love, faith, and freedom? Introducing the Kingdom of Heaven Freedom Passport. This special edition Freedom Passport captures the foundational truths of love, ethics, and freedom for all. It's a powerful reminder of Jesus's call to love one another and to be part of something bigger that you can carry with you every day. Join the movement, share the truth, and spread the love with your family and friends. Get your Kingdom of Heaven Freedom Passport at freedompassport.ca. And right now, all orders in North America come with free shipping and a free downloadable song with every purchase.
I'm in Brazil, so I'm using a VPN to get on the internet. What's a VPN? It stands for a virtual private network, and you get around these government firewalls. Suddenly, the president of Brazil banned his whole country from going on Twitter. It was a political censorship news. I've downloaded the VPN from a company called PIA VPN. We've teamed up with them at Rebel, and it's a great deal. I got on the internet really quickly, safely, and even I'm a bit of a technophobe. I managed to figure it out with 2 clicks. And here's the great news. If you go to piavpn.com/Rebel News, not only do you get a big discount, but they pay us a bit of a commission too. Everyone's a winner. Your freedom, your VPN, and a little bit of cash coming to support Rebel News. I'm using it myself to get around the censors in Brazil. You can use it too. That's piavpn.com/Rebel News.
Why should you join Canada's National Firearms Association? We currently have one of the most aggressively anti-firearm governments in our nation's history, promoting fear and placing blame like never before. Our rights, freedoms, culture, and heritage, it's all on the line. But we are fighting back, and there is strength in numbers. We work within the law to change the law, to defend competitors, hunters, collectors, and other law-abiding firearms owners. We can get through this. We've done it before, and we'll do it again, if you are with us. Canada's National Firearms Association. Freedom, safety, responsibility.
Quality of life matters. Affording groceries and the basics matters. Ottawa has a different agenda.
Their energy production cap will cut your family's budget, which means less money in your wallet. We say let common sense prevail. Tell the feds at scrapthecap.ca.
Hey, everybody, welcome back. You know, it's fun to have those ads. I remember being down in Sao Paulo using a VPN. That's because they banned Twitter. And don't think for 1 second that if Kamala Harris won, that she wouldn't follow the template used in Brazil. And remember, France, allegedly a G7 NATO ally, well, they not only cracked down on Telegram, the app, they actually arrested its CEO, Pavel Durov. Macron invited him to Paris for dinner and arrested him. What trickery and perfidy. Anyways, if there's a win tonight, especially if it's close, credit to Elon Musk. You know, you have to be strong to hire strong people around you. I mean, Kamala Harris, Joe Biden hired someone sort of weaker and dumber than him, and Kamala Harris hired someone sort of weaker and dumber than her in Tim Walz. If you look at Donald Trump, you got to say that J.D. Vance is smart, strong, young, tough. He's not some weak diversity hire. Tulsi Gabbard, who in another party would be called a diversity candidate, is clear, coherent, strong, principled, experienced. RFK Jr., Vivek Ramaswamy, Elon Musk. What I'm saying is it's actually sort of a 5-person campaign, each of the people I just mentioned. And you know they're all going to have a role in the new administration. I mean, Vivek Ramaswamy is very impressive. I spent a little bit of time with him when he was campaigning. There's something there about a guy who's the big boss, but has, and there's a little bit of jostling amongst them. That's how Abraham Lincoln called his cabinet a team of rivals, and I think he was right. Hey, I hear that our friend David Menzies is ready for a hit from Washington, D.C. He's no longer in the Rumble studio, but rather he's on the street. Let's go now to David the Menzoid Menzies, our mission specialist on a mission in Washington, D.C. Hey, David, how's it going?
Oh, it's going great, Ezra. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you. Tell me where you are.
I am on 17th Street, and this is what I referred to in my first hit, Ezra. A lot of businesses here, starting with Frame Mender, an optical store, and then we have McDonald's and the Potbelly restaurant and Pete's Coffee. The Potbelly, that's the restaurant where the building manager said you are looking at $45,000 of plywood covering the windows. So obviously, these businesses, I guess as an insurance policy, are making sure they're fortified. Now, I can tell you, Ezra, I'm experiencing a sense of deja vu in downtown Washington, because it is like the Freedom Convoy days in Ottawa back in February of 2022, which is to say, huge police presence, and certain streets are blocked off with police cruisers with their light bars flashing, typically those roads that lead to the White House. I spoke to an officer off camera and I said, are you expecting any trouble? And he gave a nervous chuckle and he said, maybe. So the night is young, and but I got to tell you, there's like an ominous feeling in the air in terms of, I think, if Trump does win, because like I said earlier, Ezra, I don't see MAGA Nation going on a rampage. I do see Antifa, the pro-Hamas, Black Lives Matters, and all the rest going brick throwing and Molotov cocktail to do a mostly peaceful protest. And by the way, that won't be the narrative won't be an insurrection for their demonstration, their riot, Ezra. It'll be standing up for democracy.
David, let me ask you,
Go ahead.
are there, sorry, Ezra, to interrupt you, are there mobs gathering yet? By mobs, I mean Democrat voters milling around?
No, not down here where we are, Sheila, certainly. Some of the cafes are open. I mean, Washington, it's not Las Vegas, right? I mean, it's a government town, lots of bureaucracies that close down right at 5, and I guess there's a race to the suburbs home.
At
I
5. 3.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Thanks for correcting me, Sheila. But
Government.
we've been driving around, and we haven't seen any mobs. We haven't seen anyone wearing masks. But like I said, the night is young, and hey, the results aren't in, as you know.
David, are the streets busy? I mean, it's 9:14 at night. A lot of Washington, D.C. is sort of offices, politicians, lawyers, office workers who really the city goes dead at night. So you're not sort of in a residential area. Is it a tourist area? Like, are the streets, how busy are they? And just tell me again, do you see cops around?
Oh, yeah. We, out of that aforementioned McDonald's, Ezra, we just saw, before we went on air, 6 police officers came out of there with some refreshments. And I'm not sure what my directions are in terms of Washington, north, south, east, west, but I can see 3 police cruisers with their full light racks on. They're blocking a street, which I believe does lead to the White House. There's 1s and 2s of people coming by. From a Toronto's perspective, as I was saying to my cameraman Maurizio, it's so great to be in a city where traffic moves, right? But again, we live in Hogtown, the worst traffic city in North America. So, and then of course the occasional Uber Eats bicycle going by, but there is no, there's neither celebration nor, any evidence of a mob gathering wearing trouble on their shirts.
All right, David, well, stay safe. If it is a riot, these are professional rioters. These are people who burn down buildings. They're not to be trifled with. They're George Soros's street teams. These are the people who burned billions of dollars by the way, of largely Black businesses in Black communities. So if it does get hot out there, I mean, we like to sometimes send you out with security. We don't have security tonight because it's sort of, I guess we didn't think of it, but if it gets violent, please go somewhere safe, like the Rumble headquarters.
Oh, I'll obey your orders as always, Ezra, but I would love to be in the thick of things, maybe do some, Mutual of Omaha, Wild Kingdom, wildlife photography from afar, because I think that will be shameful. And the mainstream media, just as they did with the Black Lives Matter rallies going back, riots, I should say, going back to 2020, you're not going to get the real deal. You're going to get reporters saying a mostly peaceful protest as they're literally ducking out of the way of a Molotov cocktail. So we'll play it by ear. And of course, we don't expect all the results to be in by the end of the night. So this riot might be on standby.
David Menzies, stay safe out there. I take your point when you say wildlife photography. That is
far
from
away.
Afar. You're using the zoom lens. You're not getting right up there with a microphone. Say, sir, why are you torching the building? It's just important to me. There's no story worth you getting hurt over.
What brings you out here tonight?
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. It warms my heart that you have my personal safety at mind. So, but we'll keep our eye on things, Ezra. And, if there aren't any developments, we're ready to go at the drop of a hat.
All right. There you have it. David Menzies, our mission specialist in Washington, D.C. Sheila, what else is cooking? I think we've got some more ads. I'm delighted to say it.
Yeah, I am too. It's nice to have the additional support of Rumble to allow us to take ad reads and have the support of these advertisers. The next one is from Sticker Pack. That's PAC, like Political Action Committee.